The grand chamber of Havens Point Space Station gleamed under the light of artificial stars. Hundreds of alien representatives filled the curved seats, their voices a mixture of clicks, whistles, and translated speech. At the lowest tier, Ambassador James Miller sat quietly, his weathered face betraying no emotion as insults flew across the chamber. "The humans are too primitive to understand the severity of this crisis," declared High Speaker Lord Blue, his crystalline form catching the light. "They still die from simple diseases on their own world." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Miller kept taking notes on his simple paper notebook, an oddity among the advanced holographic displays surrounding him. "This pathogen has already claimed millions on 3 worlds," continued Lord Blue. "We need the strongest, most advanced species to handle this crisis, not some cowardly humans who hide in their protective suits at the first sign of danger." The chamber's main display showed red spreading across star systems. The deadly virus had already jumped between species, defying conventional treatments. Several council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their own worlds potentially next in line. Ambassador Miller raised his hand. The simple gesture somehow cut through the noise. Perhaps it was his calm demeanor, or maybe the others just wanted to hear what excuse the human would offer. "Earth has faced countless pandemics throughout our history," Miller said, his voice steady and clear. "The Black Death, Spanish flu, COVID-19. Each time, we had doctors and nurses who put themselves at risk to help others. And millions died in each case," interrupted Representative Kier of the Silicon Collective. "You prove our point, human. Your species is too primitive to help." Miller smiled slightly. "Yet here we are. We survived. We learned. We adapted. And most importantly," he paused, looking around the chamber, "we remember." The chamber's AI announced an incoming transmission. On the main screen appeared Dr. Emma Parker, head of the World Health Organization. Her image showed her in a regular office, not the elaborate backgrounds other species preferred. "Honorable Council," she said, nodding politely. "Earth has already mobilized our pandemic response teams. 3 hospital ships are en route to the affected worlds. We've also begun producing isolation units and protective equipment designed for multiple species." Shocked whispers filled the chamber. Lord Blue's crystalline form flickered in agitation. "You dare act without council approval?" he demanded. "We dare to help," Dr. Parker replied simply. "Our teams have volunteered, knowing the risks. The first ship will arrive at Colony World SIS 227 within 12 hours. Miller stood up, his voice carrying through the chamber. "We may be primitive by your standards. We may be cowardly in your eyes. But we've learned something valuable from our history of diseases and disasters." He picked up his notebook, preparing to leave. "When death comes, you don't need to be the strongest or the most advanced. You just need to be willing to help." As he walked toward the exit, a small alien child from one of the diplomatic families ran up to him, its translator working overtime. "Is it true?" the child asked. "Are your doctors really going to help my world?" Miller knelt down to the child's level. "Yes, that's what humans do." "But aren't they scared? The grown-ups say everyone's scared of the sickness." "Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared," Miller explained. "It means you do what's right even when you are scared." The chamber had fallen silent, watching this exchange. The child's parent, a tall, elegant being, came forward and did something unprecedented. They bowed to the human ambassador. "Perhaps," they said softly, "we have misunderstood what strength truly means." Miller stood, straightened his simple gray suit, and walked out of the chamber. Behind him, the main display updated. 3 human medical ships, marked as HMS Mercy, HMS Hope, and HMS Compassion, were indeed crossing the galaxy, heading straight for the worst-affected areas. The Council of Advanced Species sat in stunned silence, watching as the supposedly primitive, cowardly humans did what none of them had dared to do: face death to help strangers. The first battle against the pandemic had begun. not with advanced weapons or powerful shields, but with something far simpler. Human courage wrapped in protective suits, armed with nothing more than knowledge, determination, and the willingness to help. Dr. Anna Reed stared through the window of HMS Mercy as the massive hospital ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The infected world of SIS-227 hung before them, its purple atmosphere swirling with storms. Red warning lights blinked across the ship's display, marking hot zones of infection. "Final suit check, everyone," Captain Tom Walker announced over the intercom. His voice was calm, the same tone he'd used during countless pandemic responses on Earth. "Remember your training. We've done this before." In the ship's main preparation bay, 50 medical workers checked each other's protective gear. Unlike the sleek, advanced suits other species used, human protective equipment was built on centuries of hard-learned lessons. Multiple layers, backup systems, and manual seals that couldn't be hacked or disabled. Dr. Reed, a young medic named Jack, held up his tablet. The local officials sent their data. "The virus it's nothing like we've seen before." Anna took the tablet, studying the patterns. "No," she said, a small smile forming. "But it's similar to 3 different viruses we faced. See these protein structures, like Ebola. And this infection pattern, similar to the Spanish flu." "How can you be so calm?" Jack asked, his hand shaking slightly as he adjusted his suit's oxygen feed. "I'm terrified," Anna admitted, surprising him. "But you know what? Every doctor who's ever faced a pandemic was scared. Being scared keeps us careful. Being careful keeps us alive." The ship's sensors detected movement. Through the clouds, elegant ships were rising, the last of the alien medical teams, abandoning their posts. Captain Walker watched them go, his expression hidden behind his suit's faceplate. "Their loss," he said simply. "More people for us to help." The landing was smooth, despite the storms. As the ship's main door opened, the team faced their first challenge. The landing pad was crowded with sick aliens of various species, all desperate for help. Many local medical workers had fled, leaving their patients behind. "Triage protocols," Anna commanded, her voice steady. "Team 1, set up isolation wards. Team 2, start screening. Team 3, with me to the main hospital. Move." The humans worked with practiced efficiency. While other species had relied on advanced AI and robots, humans knew that sometimes you needed the human touch. They'd learned this lesson over countless epidemics. Machines could treat bodies, but people needed more than that to heal. In the main hospital, they found Dr. Ricks, one of the few alien physicians who had stayed. His crystalline form was dulled with exhaustion. "Why did you come?" he asked as Anna's team set up their equipment. "Your species. You're not immune. You could die." "We know," Anna replied, helping a nurse set up an isolation tent. "But if we don't help, more of your people will definitely die." Simple math, really. Hour after hour, the humans worked. When their suits' power ran low, they switched in pairs, always maintaining safety protocols. When they found a new symptom, they documented and adapted. Where they saw fear, they offered comfort. Back on the ship, Captain Walker coordinated with the other human vessels arriving at different infected worlds. Their reports were similar: abandoned hospitals, scared populations, and the constant, steady work of human medical teams. "Captain," his communications officer called out, "we're getting signals from Earth. More volunteers. 3 more ships are being prepared." Walker nodded, unsurprised. "Tell them we'll send our data packets first. No sense in everyone learning the hard way." In the hospital below, Anna took a brief break, watching her team through a quarantine window. Jack, the scared young medic, was showing an alien child how to wear a mask properly, making it into a game. Another nurse was teaching local medical students about protective protocols, passing on humanity's hard-earned knowledge. "You said you were terrified," Dr. Ricks observed, standing beside her. Yet you still achieve so much. Anna thought about this. You know what's really strange? She said finally. Most humans back home don't think they're brave. The nurses, the doctors, the rescue workers, they just think they're doing their jobs. But put us in a crisis, show us people who need help. She trailed off as emergency alarms sounded. Without another word, both doctors rushed back to work. There would be time for philosophy later. Right now, people needed help. And that, after all, was what humans did best. The virus changed things in ways no one expected. Not the symptoms. Those were brutal but predictable. It was the way it changed people's hearts that surprised everyone. Dr. K watched the human medical team through the hospital's observation window. For 3 straight days, they had worked without stopping. Their protective suits were streaked with various colors of alien blood and medical fluids. Yet they kept going. More coming in, shouted a human nurse. 3 more victims arrived, their crystal-like bodies clouded with infection. The humans moved quickly, their practiced motions almost like a dance. Temperature rising in Ward 4, called out Dr. Reed. She hadn't slept in 36 hours, but her voice remained steady. Jack, get cooling units in there. Move. Kay had never seen anything like it. His own people, the Crystal Collective, prided themselves on their advanced medical technology. But when the virus hit, their robots failed. Their AIs couldn't adapt fast enough. And their doctors, they had run. But not the humans, never the humans. Dr. K. It was one of the younger human medics. We need help understanding crystal body biology. Can you spare a moment? Kay moved closer, noticing how the human suit was patched in several places. Why do you keep working? He asked instead of answering. Your suits are failing. The virus is mutating. 3 of your team are already in isolation. The medic, Robert, according to his name tag, shrugged. Someone has to help. He gestured at the ward full of patients. Would you want to be left alone if you were sick? Before Kay could answer, alarms blared. A patient was crashing in the intensive care unit. Both doctors rushed in, their conversation forgotten. Inside the ICU, Dr. Reed was already working. Her hands moved with incredible speed, adjusting medications, checking readings. Need an energy transfer now, she shouted. Kay connected the transfer unit, watching in amazement as the human doctor saved the crystal-bodied patient using techniques that combined Earth medicine with local knowledge. It shouldn't have worked, but it did. Hours later, during a brief rest period, Kay found Dr. Reed in the break room. She was studying virus samples through a portable microscope, her protective suit still on even though they were in a clean room. Your method earlier, Kay said. That combination of treatments. How did you know it would work? Reed looked up, her eyes tired but alert behind her faceplate. We didn't, but we've learned something important about diseases over the years. They don't care about species differences. A virus will kill a human just as easily as it'll kill a crystal being. So maybe what saves one life can save another. A commotion outside interrupted them. A group of local citizens had arrived, not sick but angry. They were shouting that the humans would make things worse, that their primitive methods would doom everyone. Kay expected the humans to react with anger or fear. Instead, Captain Walker walked out to meet the crowd. He removed his helmet, a shocking act that made everyone fall silent. You're scared, Walker said simply. We understand. But right now, your friends and family in there need help. You can either stand there shouting, or you can learn to help them. Your choice. He put his helmet back on and turned to go back inside. After a moment, several members of the crowd followed him, asking how they could assist. That evening, Kay wrote in his medical log, "The humans have taught me something extraordinary. Their greatest strength isn't their medicine or their techniques. It's their ability to face death without flinching, to stare into the dark, and strike a light for others to follow." As if to prove his point, a new alarm sounded. Without hesitation, the human medical team rushed to answer it. their worn suits and tired bodies somehow still moving with purpose and determination. Kay watched them go, then stood up and followed. He had made his choice. If these cowardly humans could face death day after day, then so could he. After all, someone had to help. And maybe that was all the courage anyone really needed. The isolation ward of HMS Mercy was never meant to hold its own crew. Yet here they were, 5 human medical workers, their bodies fighting the alien virus. Through the quarantine glass, Dr. Reed watched her colleagues with red-rimmed eyes. "Doctor," Captain Walker's voice came through her suit's comm. "The latest report from Earth." She read the message and somehow stood straighter. 50 more medical ships were on their way. Not military vessels, not research ships, but hospital ships filled with volunteers. Regular doctors and nurses who had stepped forward when they heard their colleagues were falling ill. "They knew the risks," Walker said quietly. "They saw the reports of our infected staff. They still chose to come." Inside the isolation ward, Jack, the young medic who had been so scared at first, lay on his bed. Despite his condition, he was helping tend to others who were sicker than him. Through the glass, he gave Dr. Reed a thumbs up. "His fever's dropping," reported the ward's monitoring system. New treatment protocol showing positive results. A small victory, but they needed more. The virus was spreading faster now, jumping between species with frightening speed. 3 more worlds had reported outbreaks. "Dr. Reed," Kay rushed into the observation room. "You need to see this. The virus, it's changing again." In the main lab, Reed and Kay studied the new data. The virus had mutated, but something was different this time. It was adapting to human biology faster than expected. "We need to recall all teams," Kay said, his crystal form vibrating with concern. "The risk to humans is too high now." Reed shook her head. "No. We adapt. We overcome." She activated the ship's comm system. "All teams, new protocol. Double suit procedures now in effect. No one works alone. Full decontamination between shifts. But your people will die." Kay's voice rose in frustration. "Some of us might," Reed agreed. "But if we leave, everyone dies." She pointed to the screen showing patient recovery rates. "Look, we're making progress. Every death teaches us something. Every recovery shows us a way forward." The ship's alert system pinged. A new message from the Galactic Council appeared on the main screen. They were ordering all human medical ships to withdraw, citing the unacceptable risk to a primitive species. Captain Walker read the order twice. Then he did something that would later become legendary in Council records. He sent back a single-word reply. "No." Hours turned to days. More human medical workers fell ill, but for each one who entered isolation, 2 more arrived from Earth to take their place. The Council's threats grew more serious, then stopped altogether as reports came in from the infected worlds. The humans were succeeding. Slowly, painfully, at a terrible cost to themselves, they were pushing back the virus. Dr. Reed worked through her 3rd straight shift, her muscles aching inside her double-layer suit. Kay worked beside her, having learned to match the humans' relentless pace. "The first infected humans are recovering," Kay said during a brief rest. "But the virus, it will come back. It always does." Reed nodded. "Of course it will. That's what viruses do. And we'll be ready. That's what humans do." In the ship's communication center, Captain Walker received a new message. This one was different. The Crystal Collective, inspired by the human sacrifice, was sending their doctors back. They had redesigned their medical robots based on human protocols. "They're not the only ones," his comm officer reported. 3 other species are mobilizing medical teams. They're asking for human advisors. Walker smiled behind his faceplate. The humans' primitive methods, their willingness to risk everything to save others, had taught the galaxy something important about courage. In the isolation ward, Jack was sitting up, teaching alien medical students through the quarantine glass. His voice was weak, but determined as he explained the importance of direct patient care, of human touch even through protective layers. Sometimes, he told them, the bravest thing isn't fighting the enemy. Sometimes it's just staying when everyone else runs away. Outside the ward, Dr. Reed finally allowed herself a moment of hope. They were paying a terrible price, but they were changing something fundamental in the galaxy's understanding of courage and care. And that perhaps was worth any price. The virus was winning, not against bodies. The humans had found ways to save most patients now, but against hope, against courage, against the very thing that had brought humanity into this fight. Captain Walker stood in HMS Mercy's command center, watching red dots spread across the galaxy map. 7 new worlds infected. The virus had mutated again, becoming airborne on some planets. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're getting panic signals. The Crystal Collective. They're closing their borders. Others are following." Dr. Reed burst into the command center, her suit showing signs of recent decontamination. "They can't close borders. We have patients mid-treatment, supplies in transit. Thousands will die." "Millions," Walker corrected quietly. "The new infection patterns." He gestured at the map. "If they close borders now, entire worlds will be cut off from help." In the medical bay below, chaos was spreading. Alien patients watched their communication devices in horror as their governments announced emergency lockdowns. Many tried to leave, fearing they would be trapped. "Listen," Jack's voice cut through the panic. The young medic, still weak from his own fight with the virus, stood in the center of the bay. "You're safe here. We're not leaving. Humans don't abandon their patients." His words, translated into a dozen alien languages, caused a moment of silence. Then Kay stepped forward, his crystal form glowing with determination. "Neither do I," the alien doctor announced. "I stay with the humans." Dr. Reed was already forming a new plan. "Captain, if borders are closing, we need to evacuate critical patients now. But we'll need help." Walker nodded, understanding immediately. He opened a channel to Earth. "This is HMS Mercy. We need every ship you can send. Not just medical vessels. Anything that can carry passengers safely." The response came within minutes. Earth was mobilizing everything. Cargo ships, passenger liners, even private vessels, all volunteering to enter infected zones that other species were fleeing. "They're calling it Operation Dunkirk," Walker told his crew, remembering the historical evacuation. History repeats itself, but this time across the stars. The next 48 hours became a blur of activity. Human ships arrived in waves, their crews already wearing protective gear. They worked with the medical teams to move patients, set up quarantine zones inside cargo holds, convert passenger cabins into treatment rooms. "They said we were cowards," Jack told a group of alien children as he helped them board a transport. "But sometimes running toward danger to help others is the bravest thing you can do." In orbit around the infected worlds, the human fleet grew. Ships of all sizes formed a bridge of hope, evacuating those who needed help while bringing in fresh medical supplies and personnel. Dr. Reed worked without rest, coordinating patient transfers. "Each ship becomes a floating hospital," she instructed the crews. "Monitor air systems constantly. Full decontamination between stops. We lose no one." The Council, watching from their secure worlds, saw something unprecedented. The supposedly primitive humans had created the largest rescue operation in galactic history, not with advanced technology or powerful weapons, but with courage, protective suits, and a stubborn refusal to give up. "Status report," Walker asked, his voice hoarse from giving orders. 14,000 patients evacuated, his officer reported. 8,000 more ready for transport. "And sir, we're getting new signals. Some alien doctors are defying their governments. They're asking to help." Kay, working alongside Dr. Reed, saw hope return to the medical bay. "You humans," he said, helping to stabilize a patient for transport. "You really don't know when to quit." "Nope. Reed agreed, checking the patient's vitals. It's one of our worst qualities. In the ship's rest area, Jack watched the galaxy map with its spreading red dots. But now there were other colors too. Blue for rescue ships, green for treatment centers, white for recovered zones. We're not winning yet, he told the fellow medic, but we're showing the galaxy something important. What's that? That true courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about being afraid and still doing what needs to be done. Above them, more human ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel, ready to help. The breaking point had come, but humanity had not broken. Instead, they had shown the galaxy what real strength looked like. The cure didn't come with a dramatic breakthrough. It came through tired doctors making small discoveries, through countless blood samples, through endless hours of work. It came the way most human medical advances had come, through stubborn determination and countless small steps forward. Dr. Reed stared at her test results, barely able to believe what she was seeing. Beside her, Kay's crystal form glowed with excitement. The virus isn't just similar to Earth diseases, Reed explained, her voice rough from exhaustion. It's following the same patterns, and that means we can use your old cures as a starting point, Kay finished. Your primitive medicine might actually save us all. The lab aboard HMS Mercy had become a strange mix of human and alien medical science. Simple microscopes sat next to advanced alien scanners. Paper notes covered holographic displays. And everywhere, humans and aliens worked side by side. Captain Walker arrived at the lab, his suit showing signs of recent decontamination. Earth just confirmed your findings, Doctor. They're already modifying our old vaccines to match the virus structure. How long until production? Reed asked. That's the good news, Walker smiled. Remember all those cargo ships we've been using for evacuation? They're being converted to mobile production facilities. We'll make the cure right here, where it's needed. In the medical bay, Jack was explaining Earth's vaccine history to a group of alien medical students. His hands moved as he talked, drawing pictures in the air. See, we've been fighting viruses for our entire history, he said. Each time we lost people, but each time we learned something new. And we never forgot those lessons. The ship's communication system crackled. A message from Earth appeared on the main screen. The first batch of modified vaccines was showing positive results. Production would begin within hours. But there was a problem. The Council's trade routes were still closed. The vaccines would need to be distributed through quarantine zones, past closed borders, to worlds that had shut themselves off from all contact. Well, Walker said after reading the report, good thing humans are good at smuggling medicine to people who need it. The next phase began immediately. Small, fast ships loaded with vaccines slipped through space. Earth's long history of getting medicine to people despite official obstacles proved unexpectedly useful in space. In the medical bay, Dr. Reed and Kay administered the first doses to critically ill patients. The room was tense with hope as everyone watched the monitors. Heart rate stabilizing, Kay reported, checking a crystal being patient. Energy patterns returning to normal. Similar reports began coming in from other ships, other worlds. The cure worked. Not instantly, not dramatically, but steadily, reliably, the way human medicine usually worked. You know what's funny? Jack said to Kay during a break. Back home, most people don't think about vaccine development or medicine distribution as exciting. It's just what we do. Kay's crystalline form flickered thoughtfully. Perhaps that is why you succeeded where we failed. You don't need excitement. You just need purpose. The recovery process was slow but steady. Human medical ships became teaching centers, sharing centuries of experience fighting diseases. Alien doctors learned about quarantine procedures, protective equipment, and the importance of direct patient care. In the ship's command center, Walker received a new message from the Council. They were officially recognizing human medical expertise and requesting permanent human medical advisors for all major worlds. They still think we're primitive, Reed noted, reading the message. They just decided that primitive might not be bad. Speaking of primitive, Kay said, holding up an ancient Earth medical text he'd been studying. I never understood why humans say, first, do no harm. Surely stopping harm is more important. Reed shook her head. Sometimes, trying too hard to stop harm can cause more damage. We learned it the hard way. Better to work slowly, carefully, making sure each step is safe. Around them, the combined human-alien medical teams continued their work. The virus was being defeated not with advanced technology or dramatic breakthroughs, but with careful, methodical effort, with simple protective suits and basic quarantine procedures. With human stubbornness and alien wisdom working together, the quiet heroes had won their victory, not with weapons or advanced technology, but with something far more powerful, the simple, stubborn determination to help others, no matter the cost. The council chamber looked different now. Where once there had been only elegant aliens in their advanced protective fields, now there were humans in their simple protective suits, standing shoulder to shoulder with representatives from across the galaxy. Ambassador Miller sat in the same seat where this had all begun, still making notes in his paper notebook. But today, he wasn't alone. Dr. Reed, Captain Walker, and Jack stood with him, their suits bearing the scars of months of service. Lord Blue's crystal form no longer shone with its former arrogance as he addressed the chamber. We gather today to acknowledge our mistake. We called humans primitive. We called them cowards. We were wrong. The main display showed the final statistics. Over 2 million patients treated. 412 human medical workers had died fighting the virus. Thousands more had been infected but recovered. Not a single human ship had abandoned its post. But numbers do not tell the whole story, Lord Blue continued. We must speak of what we learned about courage. Dr. Reed stepped forward when asked to speak. Her voice was clear despite her exhaustion. We didn't do anything special, she said. This is what humans have always done. When the Black Death struck, doctors wore primitive plague masks. When Ebola emerged, nurses wore protective suits. When any disease appears, someone always steps forward to help. The chamber was silent, remembering how their own advanced civilizations had fled from the virus, while humans rushed in with their primitive equipment. Captain Walker spoke next. You called us cowards because we wear protective suits, because we fear disease, because we take precautions. But courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about what you do despite your fear. Jack, still bearing the marks of his own battle with the virus, stepped up to the podium. The young medic who had once been so scared now stood tall. Every human who came to help was terrified. He said simply, we're not immune to fear. We're not fearless warriors. We're just people who couldn't watch others suffer without trying to help. Kay, now serving as the head of the new Combined Medical Council, raised his crystal form. The humans taught us something vital. Their protective suits, which we mocked as primitive, saved countless lives. Their careful protocols, which we saw as cowardly, prevented the virus from spreading. Their willingness to work despite fear, which we misunderstood as weakness, proved to be their greatest strength. The display changed, showing images from the crisis. Humans working tirelessly in their protective gear. The massive evacuation fleet. The distribution of the cure. Simple things, done well, over and over again. Therefore, Lord Blue announced, the Council proposes a new medical treaty. All worlds will maintain emergency response teams trained in human methods. All medical ships will carry protective equipment designed by human experts. And Earth will be recognized as the galaxy's leading authority on pandemic response. Ambassador Miller finally stood. The chamber fell silent, waiting for him to speak. He looked at his notebook, then around the room. You know what's interesting? He said. Back on Earth, right now, thousands of doctors and nurses are doing exactly what we did here. They're wearing protective gear. They're treating patients. They're facing their fears to help others. Not in space, not against alien viruses, just in regular hospitals. And none of them think they're heroes. He paused, letting that sink in. That's the real lesson here. Courage isn't about grand gestures or fearless actions. It's about doing what needs to be done, day after day, no matter how scared you are. It's about wearing your protective suit, following your safety protocols, and helping others even when you're terrified. The chamber erupted in applause. But Miller wasn't finished. "We accept your treaty," he said. "But remember, the next time you see someone taking precautions, someone being careful, someone showing their fear, remember that might be the most courageous person in the room." As the formal ceremony concluded, Dr. Reed looked at her team, human and alien alike. They were all tired, all changed, all stronger for what they had faced together. "Ready to go home?" Captain Walker asked. Reed shook her head, smiling behind her faceplate. "No. Ready to keep helping. There's always someone who needs medical care somewhere." And that, in the end, was what truly made humans special. Not that they were fearless, but that they kept going despite their fears. Not that they were advanced, but that they remembered their hard-learned lessons. Not that they were heroes, but that they simply refused to stop helping others. That was real courage. That was humanity.